However, that draw enough to send Inter Miami to the Club World Cup knockouts. Both teams managing to make it through. Inter Miami finishing second in the table on goal difference, and Palmeiras coming from 2 goals down here to get that draw, which means that they do qualify top of Group A. It is Porto and Ahly who are out and do not advance. So let's get word from Luis Suarez, who scored on the night, speaking after the game.
Lo importante es que el equipo pudo competir a la altura de lo que es este Mundial de Clubes. A pesar de clasificar, creo que dejamos una buena imagen competitiva, que eso es bueno para ver dónde está el límite de la MLS. Es un buen mensaje que estamos dando y bueno, después prepararse para lo que viene. Sabíamos que ningún partido va a ser fácil y somos conscientes que el próximo tampoco lo será.
So that's Luis Suarez. This is Lionel Messi speaking afterwards, saying although we were not able to win yesterday, the fact that we qualified for the round of 16 means a lot to us as a club. It's another historic step both for Inter Miami and for MLS. They are the only team from MLS that have reached the last 16 after both LAFC and Seattle Sounders were eliminated. Alexis Nunes was at the game for us yesterday. She's in Orlando now as well. Let me talk to you, Alexis, first, because Messi was not happy at the end of this game. Tell us more about that.
No, Kay, he was not happy at all. And what's the old song? It's my birthday or it's my party and I can cry if I want to. Well, today is Messi's birthday and he can kick up a fuss if he wants to, right? This is Leo Messi we're talking about. If you're on a team with him and you're leading 2-0 into the second half, then you're expecting to see it out. And I think it wasn't necessarily that he was upset and kicking up a fuss. I think he was just showing his frustration that they were in such a position of power in this game and they kind of just threw it all away in the end. And I think we came into this tournament talking so much about what Inter Miami needed to do, how they had so many critics questioning if they even deserved to be here. And after the showing that they put up against Porto and that stunning win and the bit of Messi magic, they were in the perfect position to try and top the group at home in front of a home crowd, even though it was a lot of Palmeiras fans. And they kind of just threw that all away. And when you're in Lionel Messi's mind, he's a born winner. He knows exactly what it takes to win. And ultimately, it was Inter Miami's defense, I think, that let them down. That was their Achilles heel coming into this. You know, Javier Mascherano spoke about all the injuries he had to his back line. Jordi Alba has since come back, but he's still just getting more and more minutes as opposed to playing the full 90. And I think that was just a frustration that he, as well as Luis Suarez, spoke about after. The word that they kept using was bittersweet because, yes, they have gone through, so they have silenced some critics, but they missed a massive opportunity to kind of silence the rest of them and top the group and avoid what is going to be a tough clash against PSG.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that. But what did you make, Gab, of what both Luis Suarez and Lionel Messi had to say after the clash?
I get their disappointment, and in a bizarre way, what makes Inter Miami good is also what cost them when you're trying to defend a lead, right? I mean, 2-0 up, there's different ways to handle it. You either keep the ball endlessly in midfield, or you sit back and compress the space and hit on the counter. But to do that, you need quick forwards, and if you're going to try to play some sort of possession, keep-away game, you need talent in the middle of the park, and they put their resources up front. So this is not a team that I think is built to defend a 2-0 lead.
You're always going to be upset, though, when you are asked to defend a 2-0 lead and you can't do that, especially when...
I suppose you never lose that competitive edge that those players, in particular, that have come here to America, have. They have made careers out of, you know, that winning mentality. And when they see a drop-off, which obviously they see week in, week out, because the standard is different to what they are used to, then the frustration is difficult for any player, particularly when you've been world-class and a superstar in Messi's case. There just always seems to be a kind of inferiority here with these games, and maybe rightly so from Major League Soccer perspective, is to say, see, this is where we are. We're not as bad as people say, and then you have Seattle Sounders who finish sort of bottom, and you know is it 6 and 2 threes? The group was maybe a little weaker. I don't know how serious Porto took it. Obviously, Palmeiras are strong, so it's a decent result. I suppose they're through, so that's a good thing from an American perspective to keep that interest going. But yeah, I think the first sort of proper, real test, competitive test to get, the further they go in this competition. I think probably, particularly defensively, I think they're going to struggle.
I mean, when you break it down, I mean, we all saw their opening game against Ahly, which they could have easily lost that one, right? So it's fits and starts. This is just from a team construction. When you've got Suarez and Messi up front, it means you can only really attack in a certain way. I mean, not only do they have other people, Pico, whatever, coming off the bench, but it's just not the same thing. It means you can only attack in a certain way. It means you can only really defend in a certain way, and you're going to be limited. And guess what? The rest of the world, pretty darn good at playing football as well, and as they discovered.
I think this is a competition that, well, if we're being honest about this, right, and I really don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of, are they good? Is he good? Are they good enough? I don't think this is a competition for judging where you are. I really don't. I mean, some will take it more serious than others. Some will play players like Bayern play today who are leaving and no longer wanted. Some will rest like PSG and one or two others, and some will go strong. So the result will be the result. I just don't think it's a competition, particularly at this time of year after the long season, and particularly in this heat, which is unusual for this time of year. And we saw that today's game with Bayern Benfica, how difficult it was for them in that sort of 3 o'clock heat to go and express themselves and play at a tempo. So I don't think it's a competition where we should really get in too much to this is the standard we are at, because the teams are all sort of pacing themselves and making changes and doing whatever they need to do with their players. And the results will be the results, and the winners will be the winners in the end. And somebody's going to take a lot of money, some will take less money.
Yes, they are going to take a lot of money. Some are actually celebrating, even though it isn't their birthday, like the Palmeiras fans. What was it like to be there, Alexis? Because they were out in force once again. We're seeing fans really turning up for their teams here.
Yeah, Kay, honestly, I don't think anybody in this competition is going to be able to rival any of the South American sides, whether it's the Argentinian ones or whether it's the Brazilian ones. They come out in force. They know how to travel. They are loud. They bring their own buses. It reminds me of the Dutch fans almost that always come with that big orange bus no matter where the Netherlands play. Well, it's the same here. And I mean, they just genuinely add to the atmosphere. I mean, Inter Miami may have been home, but it definitely was not home for them. The Palmeiras fans were out from even well before. I remember we arrived at the stadium probably 4 or 5 hours before kickoff, and they were already there in that scorching sun. So honestly, Inter Miami, they'll definitely be outnumbered if they're in Miami and if they're up against some South American opposition.
Yeah.
Some people got all the best jobs, don't they?
Or Orlando for Alexis?
There are some people within this company that get better jobs than others. You know, Gab's got to Philadelphia. At the moment, he's stuck in Bristol, Connecticut. We're sat here, and there she is, smiling away in the sunshine.
I'll be in Bristol soon.
I'm not.
I
It's
will
not
be in
because I'm
Bristol
missing
soon,
you
Craig,
or
don't
anything
worry.
like that. I'm just. You're getting, it's not. No, you just get. You know. You've just got. You've just got this. You gravitate to these very sunshiny, hot places.
She has had to drop her view of the sea in Fort Lauderdale to go to Orlando today. So she has taken.
She's had to change the backdrop to make it look less enjoyable.
She's definitely enjoying herself.
Yeah, unfortunately, the balcony here is not as fabulous as our balcony back in Fort Lauderdale, but it'll do. It's a nice little quaint town.
There we go. She's enjoying herself. As mentioned by Alexis, it is PSG next up for Inter Miami. That is obviously Lionel Messi's former club, and he will be up against his former coach in Luis Enrique from their Barcelona days. Before I bring that back into the studio, what's been the reaction to this tie, Alexis?
Yeah, okay, that's exactly what Luis Suarez and Messi and all of them are talking about by using the word bittersweet. Yes, they're happy that they got through. Yes, it was a decent showing in the group, and everyone feels that they should be happy for getting through. But they were in a position to top this group and avoid PSG. And we're talking about right now what we can call the best team in Europe. If we're going to go off of the merit of the Champions League, they are the winners. But now the reaction is that, this may be the end of the road for Inter Miami, but it could get juicy because they have Leo Messi, who used to play for PSG, who used to play under Luis Enrique at Barcelona. I mean, you only need to look at our ESPN FC social media accounts who are already digging up old comments from Messi where he said that he wasn't happy most days when he was in Paris. He didn't like the training. And then we're all talking about how Messi also confronted Luis Enrique when he was at Barcelona for leaving him on the bench, that there were some tensions there. So there's a lot of parallels to be drawn in this one that can add a little bit of seasoning to the pot to make this good. Because if it's someone that knows how to beat PSG, it probably is Leo Messi. But you do get the feeling that this is exactly what they were trying to avoid.
It's about time they put out something with some context, isn't it? I suppose and I don't want to go down this road, but I suppose if you're going to go out to somebody, and I'm not suggesting they're going out, and Gab mentioned they could have lost match day 1 to Ahly, things could change. But I suppose if you're in this competition, you want to give yourself as big a test as possible, you know. And it depends what side PSG put out. It depends what mindset they're in. But it's just going to give you a little flavour, potentially of playing, you know, well, factually playing the best team in Europe, because they were in the second half of the season, but playing certainly the most enjoyable, the most talented, the most entertaining team that finished the European season. That's what they're coming up against. Now, will they face that kind of team with that kind of intensity? I don't think they will.
No,
but it's still a good test.
Well, look, let's not pretend. I mean, this isn't summer tour football. Certainly when you get to the knockouts. I take your point that we've seen some level of rotation quite a lot. It's not unusual in knockout tournaments, but I think the thinking is...
It's very slow, though, the games, isn't it?
And I think that's down to the weather and the conditions, especially poor Bayern, where they had to play.
So, but my point is, if you look at the way PSG played the second half of the season, it was pressing, it was tempo, it was passing. I mean, particularly, you think about what they did to Liverpool, never mind into Milan in the final. We have not seen even a smidge of that in this competition.
They're going to have to adjust, and I think this is a good point. This is interesting. I mean, in the sense that we've seen with Luis Enrique, because we saw it against Arsenal as well, right? They can come and press the stuffing out of you and try to play high intensity. They can also play possession, right? We saw the 26 passes for the opening goal, the Dembele goal. So they can beat you different ways, and I think Paris Saint-Germain are certainly a position where if it is a slower tempo game, they're not going to be fazed by it. Might experience come into it a little bit? I mean, this might be one of the levers that you think maybe Javier Mascherano might try to push in this game to try to get an edge, in the sense of obviously the individual experience. I don't know. Obviously, PSG overwhelming favourites, and I think so well-rounded. But one thing I would disabuse is the notion is they're going to try to win. They're taking this seriously. Once you're in the knockouts, just simply the money side of it, the prestige
PSG.
side of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're still not going to see the kind of football and the kind of tempo we saw in the regular season. Even if they want to win in their own mind, you're just not going to see that. Not with the conditions, not because they've had a long season, not because they're looking forward to the next season. You're just not going to see, whatever way you butter this up, and however, whether it's the last 16, the quarters, the semis, the finals, you're not going to see that intensity.
No, when we think of intensity, we think of football played in temperate climate, right? In temperate conditions. Unfortunately, in this country, of course, they play football all summer long in MLS. That's another story. But so yeah, you have that. But we saw in the opening game against Atletico Madrid, not a bad side. We saw what they can do. So yeah, they're going to have to turn into a slightly different team than what they were in Munich on May 31st, or even before that in the closing rounds. That, I think, is without
the
question.
good news for the players and all the players is that this current heat wave, which is coming across the country, and I mean it is. I mean it's 100 degrees today here in Connecticut. I mean it's way. I talked about it yesterday. It's probably a good 15, 20 degrees above where it normally is. We're normally high 70s, 80, and that's quite hot. If you're a player playing at 80 degrees, even that's tough. So when you push it to 90, 100, that's a problem. We're coming out of this heat wave. Whether it'll go again to the hundreds, 110 when these players go on, I don't know. I'm not the weatherman. I've no idea. They don't even know what the hell's happening half the time. So how do I know? But hopefully it will just drop considerably, and obviously the times of the games might get later and later as there are less games, so it'll be a little cooler. Then we might see a little bit more intensity to the games, and I can understand why some of these games in this heat are the way they are. And we discussed it yesterday about the Dortmund players staying in the dressing room. I think the Bayern subs did that today as well. So it's something that's seeping through. I'm just going to sit in the dressing room with a cup of tea and watch the TV while my mates are out there boiling
Yeah.
Well, if they close the roof in Atlanta,
Yeah, that's
it
where it's
might be a
gonna
little
be.
more manageable.
Well, it's not closing. If you close the roof, as long as you get some air coming in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, we're going to have a lot of time to talk about that game. Obviously, the last 16 come up. Alexis, thank you so much. We'll let you go and enjoy the
yourself.
delights of Orlando.
Yeah.
4-4 it would finish. Definitely gave us some entertainment, though, in this Club World Cup. From that Group A, it is Inter Miami and Palmeiras who will be moving on to the last 16. Okay, this is the front cover of Mundo Deportivo. In fact, Nico Williams has been on the front cover for a number of days over the last week. Compromiso, his commitment, Nico Williams and his agent have informed Athletic Club of the player's desire to join Barcelona. So now we talk about how this is going to work. Pulling another lever?
It's a lever.
Yeah.
Now, this is the financial side of
That's
it.
the financial side of how it's going to work.
There's three of us at this table, and two of us have absolutely no idea how Barcelona might make this work. And there's a man here who may be able to tell us if it can work or can't it.
You'd have to forensically look at the books, which Javier Tebas and La Liga are going to do. Obviously, Barcelona not out of the woods. They've pulled levers before. They've had disputes before. So I can't come out and tell you they need to, shed X amount of salaries, X amount of players. They certainly do have some players that they can move on to raise money. But it's very simple. He has a release clause in his contract. He negotiated that release clause after the Euros last year. He extended his deal. He said, yeah, but I want a release clause. So I think it's around 60 million euros.
68 million.
And they're going to have to find a way to put that money down. And then whether they register him or not, well, that'll be Uncle Tebas and his bean counters who are going to decide.
Well, I think if you looked at Barcelona, you'd say, do I really need to go out and buy this player? But then the time to really strengthen your side is not to panic buy when you're struggling, but to go and strengthen a successful winning side, which Barcelona were. Now, the big question is, are you going to try and manoeuvre money and players around to bring a player in that means you're going to have to shuffle the pack that was so successful, i.e. Nico Williams comes in and plays on the left, that means Rafinha has to move, the sort of dynamic changes, or are you going to go and spend this type of money just to beef up the squad?
And let me answer this. You have needs. You have a center forward who's going to be 37 years old before the summer's out.
Yeah.
Logic would suggest...
Well, he doesn't play centre forward very often.
That's what I mean, right? So you're bringing this guy in so that Rafinha can move into the middle where, by the way, a year ago, you spent a ton of money on Dani Olmo, right? Got yourself in trouble with the authorities over that one. You still have poor Gavi, who, was supposedly Barcelona's most important player 2 years ago and then never been the same since his injury, but obviously he's a club asset. So how are you... Oh, and you have Fermin Lopez, who everybody seems to forget about, but is perhaps your most consistent guy. You've got three other number 10s, right?
So this is, if we ask...
Did you say Fermin Lopez?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about Ferran Torres?
Ferran Torres as
Now,
well.
that's the one for me, because we're looking at this and you say Dani Olmo. Can you trust Dani Olmo with injury? I think the answer at the moment from RB Leipzig, from Spain, from Barcelona and the big money is no. He spent a fair chunk of time out the side last year because of injury. That's something historically that's sort of gone through certainly the recent stages of his career. Now you're talking about moving one of the best players in Spain into the pocket in Rafinha when he did a great job coming from the wide position. Not always staying in the wide position and letting Balde go down the left-hand side when fit, but starting position is very important. Doesn't matter where you end up sometimes because you're making a run into space, but your starting position is very important. When you go and play in the number 10 role behind a Lewandowski, it changes the optics because you might have a defensive midfielder or two in there. There's less space. He made hay last year, Rafinha, making those out-to-in runs from wide, diagonally into the space between fullback and centre-half. He made a season of it. Brilliant. And Lamine Yamal on the other side generally gave them width. You're taking a winning team that probably has more issues defensively than it did offensively and trying to change it. Now, maybe Hansi Flick is saying, I want to make it better. It was great, but I want to make it better. But when you have all these players and you try to change it, it can convolute things. And I go back to Ferran Torres, who wasn't even on that starting 11. He was absolutely brilliant last year, Ferran Torres. It coming in a wide position, it coming in number 10, and coming in when Lewandowski was injured or needed a rest. He did a brilliant job. A job that would say to me, at this moment in time, I don't need to rush out maybe and buy a 70, 80 million pound striker.
So if you were advising them right now and Nico Williams was on the table, you'd tell them not to go ahead
Well,
with
look, if I could get Nico Williams or others and it was doable and it wasn't going to take away from my budget in other areas of the field, then fine, because you're beefing up your squad. And what manager? There's no manager on the planet, apart from the Man City manager, doesn't want a big squad. He's the only one that's crying about a big squad. Everybody else wants players to pick from. So I get that. The question is, if they've got 70 million to spend and that's all they can spend, do they need to go and spend it on a player who's a talent, didn't have a very good season with Athletic Club, who's a talent, but you have other players, Gavi, Fermin Lopez, Ferran Torres, there are others, and I'm not sure that's something that Barca would call a necessity.
It's about resource allocation, right? And looking forward and planning. It's not just Lewandowski who's getting old, and maybe Ferran Torres can be your week in, week out centre forward. I don't know. I'm not so sure about that. But you have an issue.
I don't think so, but he did a good job filling in. Of course. Yeah.
So then that means you're going to have to get somebody else eventually, right? Centre back, Inigo Martinez. He's going to be 35 years old, right? You're going to need somebody else there. Araujo's been terrible, and they've been trying to shift him. He doesn't seem to like him at all. Nope. Christensen's got a whole raft of issues and is always injured, right?
Eric Garcia.
Yeah, okay, let's not go there.
No, I'm not. Played right back.
But you need to find a partner. So why not invest, you would think, logic, let me address this position so that chickens don't all come home to roost at the same time. I go further, even midfield, right? Sure, you've got Bernal coming back. You have Frankie de Jong, who, obviously is there and is great. He is a saleable asset. He has a salary situation as well. Are you really going to put all your chips in the Bernal basket, given that the guy's 17 years old and played one game last season?
The opening game.
What? Exactly. Played very well. Yeah. Looks like a player. So this seems to be like the least of your needs, and I find it very surprising. And I would genuinely love to know how on board with this is Flick. Does Flick have some other plan? I mean, is he thinking of playing Nico at fullback and then you move Balde to right back and move Jules Koundé inside, do something fancy, funky like that? I don't know. I mean, Nico did play fullback early, very early on when he first came up. I genuinely don't know, but I think it's a question that, because this is really hard to understand why you would choose to spend your very limited finances in this way.
I don't think he is looking to do that, and I think
I don't think so either.
And I think it does beg the question whether he's on board with strengthening this part of the team rather than the other parts of the side. This was a back four that was very difficult to get in tune with last year. It played off. When you come into this side, you had to be on the money because you were squeezing up fast, you were playing offside, and you had to be playing as a unit. So I don't think he's going to move Jules Koundé. Baldi's not going to shift when injured, and Pau Cubarsí was brilliant as a youngster. Now Martinez next to him, do you go? I think it's more prevalent to go as good as Inigo Martinez was. You've got a really great teenager in Cubarsí, you've got a French international in Koundé, you've got a Spanish international, an experienced player in Balde. Is to go and find a quality, experienced centre-half to stand next to a very, very good up-and-coming young centre-half. I think that would be a more prevalent way to spend the money, but I get the feeling that's not sexy enough for Joan Laporta.
Would it be mean to suggest that there's elections coming up this year, Barcelona maybe? And so he's thinking bling and, less worried about what happens next year?
Entertaining players to get the fans on my side. Well, we'll see. Anyway, if you want to stay up to date with all the transfer talk, head on over to our website and you can see what's happening with Nico Williams, Barcelona, and many more. The disciplinary committee actually reviewed the incident and decided to extend the ban, and they deemed it serious foul play. Obviously, it's his second red card in 4 games. It now means he's suspended in 2 different competitions, the Club World Cup and the Premier League as well, where that does come back.
I'm trying to remember his last sending off. It's been such a long time, I've no idea.
Newcastle towards the end of the season. That nearly cost them.
That's right. That seems like a long time away, this Club World Cup.
Well, you were away for a long time, so we'll let you off.
Well, the fact that FIFA have given him 2 games, you could easily, back in, I would have thought an automatic, a challenge like that. Frankie's here. Has he sorted his internet?
He sorted it today.
Is that what it was?
That's a good image,
Something like that. I would have thought a challenge like that would have been it's violent, it's over the top, it's reckless, it ticks. I would have thought that would have been an immediate, whether it matters or not, I thought that would have been an automatic 3-game ban for making a challenge that basically had no intent. I mean, the ball, you can't argue that he couldn't go in front of FIFA to the court and say, Your Honour, I was going for the ball there. There's no chance. There is no chance whatsoever. He was not anywhere near the ball. He just tried to play the player, and it was extremely dangerous. So I think it should be automatic 3 when it's something like that.
Do you think he's got lucky here with the 2?
Well,
Definitely.
No, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, for me, a challenge like that, and in any platform, whether it be the Club World Cup, the World Cup, the League, any challenge like that should be an automatic minimum 3-game ban.
Is Craig right, Frank?
Oh yes, he's 100% right. It's a violent conduct. He doesn't try to play the ball. He could have broken the opponent's leg. At least he wanted to hurt him. I don't think he wanted to break his leg, but I think he wanted to hurt him, and that's absolutely forbidden. And when it's what he wanted to do, it's compulsory. Yeah, he deserves at least 3 games. It could have been very, very bad for the opponent. So you have to punish the players in order to show to the others that they shouldn't do that.
So let's talk about Chelsea next season then. Are they going to stick with Nico Jackson and Liam Delap, and is that enough for them?
I mean, well, it's more than they had this year, right? Because they had Nico Jackson and the idea of Marquinhos and the idea of Christopher Nkunku, who's not a centre forward up front. I think this is really disappointing for Maresca. Jackson, I think he improved last season. There was that whole spell when he kept getting those bookings for dissent. Remember, he seemed to get one every single game. He managed to get that out of his game. Then we saw the red cards. But I think the plan this season was to alternate him and Delap. They've got the Champions League this year as well. Maybe he could have gotten some minutes out wide on the wing, where they are, they're certainly short-handed on the wing. It's really just Madueke and Neto in terms of real wingers, given the Mudryk situation, given that nobody likes Joao Felix or wants him around. But to do that, they need the real Nico Jackson, the guy who, just as he improved on the pitch in the way he plays, he needs to control this stuff. And, twice in 2 months is too many.
Do these numbers suggest that he's improved?
Well, what I can tell you is, to sort of align with what Gab was saying, there is absolutely no doubt that at the start of the season, the first half of the season, his performances by his standards before were excellent. His link-up play, his goal scoring improved, his movement improved where he came short. Early in the season, he was coming short a lot, and Chelsea were going behind very quickly with runners. And it was brilliant to watch, and it was entertaining. And then, for whatever reason, in the second half of the season, it sort of fell away badly for Maresca. I don't have the answers why, but a bunch of players lost form, and we started to see less of Cole Palmer. He struggled up front, Jackson as well, and they sort of unravelled a little bit. Now they managed to clamber over the line in the end and get Champions League football. But the entertainment side of it, the sort of playing teams off the park, where they allowed... I watched them many, many times away from home in the first half of the season, where they actually allowed teams some possession. Other teams coughed it up, or Chelsea won it, and they were in the other penalty area within 4 or 5 seconds. Bang, 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 in behind. And it was like, wow, when we sat here and we said, they're in this title race. They certainly were in terms of the points at the time. Now, I don't think anybody felt they would have enough strength or quality to go all the way.
Including Maresca.
Well, and that's understandable. They were certainly in the mix in terms of the way they were playing and the points they had. But the fall-off for them was quite worrying. It was quite worrying in the end. Now, I don't think he can afford another kind of fall-off like that, if I'm being honest. And I think as we sit here now, if you said to me, what kind of season are they going to have? I'm not sure. Are you? I mean, would you be confident to say with the football that they've got coming up and the players that they've got at the moment, are they comfortably going to be in the top 4?
No,
I'm not sure.
Nothing's going to be comfortable. Nobody's comfortable top. I mean, very few teams are comfortable top 4 in England to begin with. they have banked on this idea in spending all this money on these very young players, very promising players everybody wanted, that there's going to be a linear improvement year after year, right? Moises Caicedo, fantastic. He's still very young. He should still improve year after year. Cole Palmer should still improve. Malagusto should still improve. Levi Colwill should still improve. The problem is you can't always bank on a young player improving. I mean, you've been around this. Not every young phenomenon improves like this and just gets 10% better every year. It just doesn't work that way. It's sometimes they improve by a lot, sometimes they regress, sometimes they just never get there. And when you have so many players who are in that position and you're somewhat hamstrung financially in terms of the spending, because Chelsea are not out of the woods in financial stability rules, they have to move, they're going to have to move a lot of players around. You know, then it becomes, I think, really, really tough. And for better or worse, Nico Jackson is supposed to be a leader on the team, right? Next year will be his third season as a starter. There's not many people who have that under their belt, and you expect a leader to behave like a leader.
When I was at Chelsea and Celtic, we had very experienced players, Frank and a bunch of them, obviously, at Chelsea and Celtic, you know, Champions League winners, and Paul Lambert, and Henrik Larsson, and Alan Stubbs, and the list goes on. It was almost all the guys at Celtic were Danish and Norwegian and Italian and Scottish and English internationals. And a few youngsters. When I went to Derby, there was a lot of youngsters, and a lot of good youngsters like Rory Delap and Seth Johnson and all these other boys. They were good kids, they were good players. Some of them went on to play for England a few times. But I sort of bemoaned the fact that you know, as exciting as it is having kids and younger players, more mistakes happen because they try things and when they're in their sort of fledgling career. That at times in a game you're sort of trying to calm everybody down and from a more experienced sort of leadership position and say, you know, it's 10 minutes to go, we should be doing this. And the more youngsters you've got, the more sort of inclined they are just to forget these things and just go for it and leave themselves open. And I think looking at Chelsea, they have some very, very good players, but they are younger and they don't really have, you know, anybody in the centre-half position or the centre midfield position when things are tight or when things need to just be pulled back a little bit with 10 minutes to go or 5 minutes to say, hey, let's be doing it. Caicedo is a brilliant player. You know, Lavia, who's not played a lot, is a very good player. Fernandes, the list goes on. But they don't really, to me, they're all doing their own jobs, but they don't have anybody in that position, central midfield, that's sort of just directing the traffic, not doing too much on the ball, but being the eyes and ears of everybody around them. That's something that they don't quite have.
So let's put this to the test then, because Frank is usually a little bit more positive about Chelsea.
Hold on a minute. Hold on. Are you suggesting that there's some negativity?
Maybe.
That's not negative.
No, not negativity.
No. But you see, you have Chelsea viewers watching this, right?
Who's likely to be more generous towards Chelsea?
Well, that's not. Before Frank pipes in here, that's not the point, is it? We're not here, and we are not here. And we are not paid to be generous to anybody. We are here to analyse the situation. And I think when you analyse the situation is there is still this sort of naivety towards this team in terms of they'll play some good football, but do they have the core mentality and organisation skills within the back line and the midfield to get through the real nitty-gritty, tough parts of the season? And that is going to... Yeah, they've got flair. We know that. But I think the analysis is not negative, which you keep bringing up.
You brought up the word negative.
is I think, factual.
Which is why
realisation.
I want to put it to the test by seeing...
Well, yeah, that's not the test.
Frank agrees with you guys. Frank, next season for Chelsea, how does it look to you?
Well, I'm sorry, Kay, but I will have to agree with the guys, and especially Mr. Craig Burley, because
this was the
test. That's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, having an experienced player brings inconsistency because that's what it is. It's life. Maybe we don't know what we want when we are aging, but we know what we don't want. Therefore, we make less mistakes and we are a little bit more cautious. They don't know how to do that yet. Yeah, they have the talent, and I'm with Craig, with all the players that they named, those players are absolutely talented, but they need to get the experience in order to get the consistency of it. And that's what is lacking right now, and it's why maybe we have to go to another player like Nicolas Jackson, not reaching what we are expecting. But with the others, yeah, you can do something good, but you won't get that thing, and you're not going to be sure of what you're going to get it when you're going to get it. That's the problem. And it's why I always said, bring like 2 experienced players to make sure they can get along with and get the experience from them. But I don't think it's going to be the type of transfer fee they're going to get, because they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that with older players.
Thank God Arsenal are not in this competition. Well, I don't want to have the Kai Havertz conversation.
No, let's
No, we won't.
let's avoid the Kai Havertz piece. So then the question becomes, do I need another winger? I would say yes, you do, but careful. You just signed another 18-year-old in Estevão,
Oh my God.
right? Who presumably you spent a lot of money on, who's also raw, who's also going to need to develop. That's what leaves me a little bit skeptical. I'm just wondering, with that money, rather than a guy who's a project where you genuinely don't know with Gittens if he's going to turn into, Aaron Lennon, or, I don't mean that disparagingly, but, a guy who runs at people and whatever, but there's a ceiling there, or whether he's somebody who can actually contribute in the here and now. I don't know. I would kind of feel like you've got enough of those young project-type players, because he is legitimately raw. We're not talking Lamine Yamal here. He does not yet have the mind of a veteran, put it that way.
Well, we even saw that with, I don't want to go down the sort of doping route, the legal challenge that Modric is facing. I'm not getting into that. But prior to him having these issues, we saw what bringing in, and I'm not generalising here, but we saw what they paid for a raw talent and what that can be.
Yeah.
Because he struggled. And when you saw him with Ukraine, he would do, particularly with Ukraine, he would do some great stuff. But it was raw. And his first game, I think he came on at Anfield, his Chelsea debut. I might be wrong, but I think it was his debut off the bench. He came on and he sparkled for 20 minutes. I was like, wow, this is it. And then it just sort of hit him like a wall. And once the crowd started, and I'm not suggesting the crowd were booing him, but the more mistakes and the more bad touches and the more the poorer his end product got, the more the sort of pressure from the crowd came in, without being personal. And you could feel that. Watching Modric and some of the younger players, it's difficult to handle that pressure. When you're having a bad touch or a bad pass, and Sky, like Timo Werner, both at Chelsea and Tottenham, you're getting in that final third and you're shinning it over the top, and the crowd are howling at you. It affects you. I don't care who you are. And he's a German international. He's a much more experienced player, and I think we saw a lot of that from Modric before his issues that he's facing. And you're always, what you're buying when you're getting these players is the unknown, as Gab said. It could be that way, and it could plateau and go the other way. You just, as a manager in particular, you just don't know.
It's certainly unprecedented to have so many players who are so young. Some very young players. Bukayo Saka at 19 was mature, right? This guy, Jamie Gittens, at 20 is not. And I think that's something to bear in mind.
Frank, your thoughts on this?
Well, skeptical, said Gab. It's where I am or who I am. Because so many times, as Craig mentioned, we had that. Modric, Timo Werner, and Nkunku, even Kai Havertz. I mean, so many times we saw players coming, especially coming from Bundesliga, being very young, belonging to what I have to call a family club. Even if Dortmund is a great club, a big club, it's still a type of club where you take care of the players. You don't launch the players like that from nowhere. When it's going to be at Chelsea, it's going to be a different story. We want to see something immediately. And that's hard when you're 20 years old. You have to settle down. You moved from a championship to another. So wait and see. We talked about Colomwani 2-3 days before. Now we are talking about Jamie Gittens. So we're going to see. Wait and see. I want to wish the best to the guy, but I have to be skeptical because of what I saw at the past.
How long do you wait when you're in this sort of position, buying all these youngsters? It's a very difficult position to be in. I mean, you might be buying all these assets going forward that are going to blossom and be worth a lot of money in future years, and I don't know if that will bring success. But you look at the pinnacle in English football, certainly last season, which was Liverpool, and what did they do over the last couple of years, in particular with the midfield? They go out and they bring in Dominik Szoboszlai from Germany. He's not old. I think he's 23, 24 at the time, but he's the captain of Hungary. He's been around the track quite a lot of times for a guy still in his early 20s. And then off the back of success, they go out and they bring in another... No, I know they spent a lot of money, but they go in and bring another proven player who is a game changer in Florian Wirtz, who is not old and is not going to be in the knacker's yard in 3 or 4 years, but he's not a teenager. He's not 19, 20, he's not an unproven player. And that's the difference at the moment. You have one side who have brought in some real experience and still relatively young, and one team that seem hell-bent on just going out and going, hey, 20 years old, we'll have him.
And let's not forget who's coming next summer too, because they've already signed him, is Giovanni Quenda from Sporting, right? You spend, what, 60, 70 million euros on yet another winger, a very good winger, very exciting in that wing-back position. But then all of a sudden you go from a dearth of wingers this year to next season, right? Madueke, Quenda, Estevan, this guy if he comes, poor Neto as well. And then all of a sudden you're full up on wingers and they're all very, very young, right? How does that work?
I don't know how it was. And I think there's something that bugs me here and will continue to bug me about the recruitment is the João Felix scenario. Is just that would, if I was sitting watching and looking at these recruitment people, whoever's still there making the decisions, and whether they're all sort of arguing about I'm doing, whether there's too many of them, I don't know. That situation would concern me, that they saw the player, they saw the movie, they had seen the history, and yet they delved back in with money for a player they did not need.
I'm going to give him a little pass, a small pass on João Felix.
I'm looking forward to this.
This was an accounting move. This was a Conor Gallagher move. They can say, oh, no, it's not a swap deal. He just happened to be sold at the same time for the same amount of money that came back the other day. But this was all about amortization. This is all about being able to log a 50 million or however much it was profit on Conor Gallagher. And you got to take something the other way, and you get João Felix, and you can spread the fee over 6 years, and presto, you've conjured up 45 million out of thin air for your books. I mean,
I don't understand, and I'm sure we don't want to get in a whole program about this, but why? And producer,
you just said,
no, in fact,
please know all of our ears.
I think we will. In fact, I think we'll spend an hour on this. No, but just quickly. Why, having recruited the money for Conor Gallagher to Atletico Madrid, did they have to spend it?
Because Atletico Madrid were not going to give them 50 million in cash. They didn't have it, they didn't want to spend it, and whatever else. So they decided, hey, take João Felix instead of the 50 million. And so that way Chelsea can spread the cost of João Felix over time, and they book the profit from Conor Gallagher straight away.
I see what you mean. That is a small...
Yeah, and then at the same time, they also thought, we're working with Uncle George. We do Uncle George Mendes a favor. This may help us down the road. Oh, look, he brought us Neto. And ultimately, João Felix is ridiculously talented. People hope after hope. It's like a bad breakup with a girlfriend, right? You go back and you say, hey, maybe this time it'll work out. Maybe this time João Felix will harness his... Look, he's so talented that he fooled Milan as well, right?
Yep.
In January.
Yeah, and they didn't listen to anybody.
Well, exactly, but you know what? He is, in terms of technical ability, I'll say this right now, he's one of the top 5 most gifted players in the world. He's got a whole raft of other problems.
That's the Oscars music, by the way, coming up. Tomorrow's show, ESPN FC.
We're breaking down amortization.
We are. We'll probably be still talking about this very subject. Tune in tomorrow to find out if we are. Both are out, but Auckland celebrating not getting 10, 7, whatever it might be, put past them, going out on a high for them. Here is the final standings for Group C then. It's Benfica who lead on 7 points, Bayern Munich behind them on 6. They will be advancing to the knockout stages, which means next up for Bayern, it is Flamengo, 4 p.m. in Miami, coming up this weekend. Scattered thunderstorms, seeing as though we are meteorologists right now.
Well, I tell you what, that was a difficult draw for old Auckland City though, wasn't it? Really, sentimental, bit of empathy. It was not easy, but I'm sure it was a good experience for them. Anyway, back to the weather. What, scattered thunderstorms? What?
Scattered thunderstorms.
Where?
Expected in Miami.
It's always thunderstorms in Miami. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. As sure as the sun comes up in the morning, thunderstorms. Afternoon, blatter down for a good half an hour, clear.
So there we go. So now we get the tests up next. So we're seeing a Flamengo against a Bayern Munich, and we're seeing how important this tournament is to these teams and what type of game we might be expecting from them, Gab.
Yeah, this whole thing, are they taking it seriously, is important. You know my thoughts on this, but I don't think anybody's going to doubt Flamengo. Just having been around the club, having been around their fans in Philly, it's an absolute priority. I think for Bayern as well. You know, I think they took this game against Benfica maybe a little bit lightly, and we can come out and say, oh, they drew, so they weren't taking it seriously. Well, you know, they certainly had their chances to win this game as well. I think Bayern are obviously going to be favourites, but not by a lot, because Flamengo have a ton of cohesion, they have a ton of experience. Talked about Miami, if it is hot, if it is humid, a team like Flamengo who are a little bit older, but there's a lot of individual quality from Pulgar to Jorge de Arrascaeta to Jorginho, of course, to Danilo at the back. I think they can definitely hang with Bayern.
Yeah,
I think
3
what they
PM as well in Miami.
Oh, I've no idea. You know better than me. Well, you know.
Hot, humid, scattered thunderstorms.
Thank you very much. What about the rest of the week?
I'll check back with my sources.
Well, I think what you do know is, if you're a European team, or if you're a big elite European club, as some of them are. Well, Frank, all I'm saying is, if you're playing a South American team, one of the better South American teams, you need to be up for it, or you could have some egg in your face. And I think we saw that certainly with the Flamengo game. Who was it against, the last game they played?
It was against Chelsea.
Against Chelsea. I think
and Nicolas Jackson got sent off.
Yeah, that game we saw the clip of earlier, where Flamengo played some great stuff in this game, particularly early on. And I think there is no doubt, let there be no doubt that both the South American teams and their supporters want scalps. They want some big European scalps. They want this tournament. They are taking it serious. They have been the best in the tournament thus far. And if you're one of the teams like Bayern are, and one or two others playing these teams, then you are going to have to raise your game from where you have been. Otherwise, you are going to get beaten. Because their mindset, to me, watching the games that I've watched in this tournament thus far, which is not as many as others, is they are the mindset of these players is different. They're not moaning about the heat. They're not moaning about the pitches, as far as I know. They're just getting the job done. They're playing with a higher intensity, and they're playing some good football. So at this moment in time, the South American sides, the big ones, are the teams, without a doubt, are the teams to beat in this competition.
What do you want to say, Frank?
Two things I want to say. I want to say to some people, they have to stop complaining about the grass, about the heat. I mean, that was the beauty of when I was watching the '86 World Cup, for example, in Mexico, when before me, the '70 World Cup, the same area, same country, the '94 World Cup, where the grass was different, the weather was hot. In Mexico, it was high because Mexico City is in a very high level. And nobody complained about that because that was special. And that was the football of there. In Brazil, the grass were thicker, longer, and that was the kind of football we had. That was a different football. Now, everybody was the same football, the same grass, the same water, the same heat, where everything's... So stop complaining, play football. We are in a different side of the country, of the world, sorry. You're not in England or in France. You play in the United States, you play like it is, and don't stop complaining. The other thing is, I saw Bayern Munich, Benfica. I finally have the answer of whether that's the ending of the season or the beginning of a new season. When I saw Thomas Müller playing and Di Maria playing, I know that's the ending of the season because those players, one is going to go on retirement and the other is going to go back to his first club. So that's clearly the ending of the season. It was a question that I asked before. Nobody gave me the answer.
Now, if these players that are all doing all this moaning, what they want to do is go and get themselves, I don't know how you get this in the States now or anywhere else for that matter, is a VHS video recorder. And get yourself a VHS tape of the 1986 World Cup, particularly the Scotland matches, right? And you want to go and you want to fixate yourself on a one Mr. Stephen Nicol playing in Mexico. He looked like, it was so hot, he looked like a tomato with a Scotland strip on. He was that red. Right? Now that's a problem. Honestly, he looked like a giant tomato with a Scotland top on. So if he can do it in Mexico, this lot can do it here.
And you don't need the VHS. It's on YouTube.
Yes.
We'll post the links.
Go and find it.
There you go. I forgot about that.
Go and find it. However, the Bayern players, like their German counterparts from Borussia Dortmund, also took the opportunity, the bench, to watch from inside and not sit out in that sweltering heat. Smart. There we go. Nobody's got any complaints about that. It is hot.
To be fair, they look.
Did we mention?
They look miserable, don't they?
Did we mention it was hot in America during the summer on the show over these last few days?
A little bit hotter than normal.
Is it a carpet in the dressing room?
It did look like a carpet, yeah. It did look like a carpet there, Frank, yes. Have you got a problem with that?
Wow, oh my God. Yeah, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with many things, you know. That's not my football, you know. Substitute in the dressing room because it's too hot with a carpet floor. Come on. Well, I don't know where football is going, but it's not going my way, I can tell you.
The game's moved on.
The game's moved on, and Auckland will.
You know, we have carpets these days. Players just do as they want. They sit in the dressing room. It's just the way it is, isn't it?
Yeah, we have throwing coaches and set-piece coaches and all sorts of things.
Well, Arsenal not here. We don't have to chat about that.
Auckland, though, as Craig mentioned, getting that draw against Boca, having something in the end and going out on a high, relatively.
Yes. Christian Grey, a name who will live on forever in the history
in his own house.
And its novels.
And can I just remind people, just to be, I won't get into the qualification thing, there are professional football clubs in New Zealand. Auckland City is not one of them. This is not the peak of New Zealand football. There are other teams as well. Just so people get the right, don't get the wrong impression about it. Yeah. And it's not just Chris Wood.
We could obviously, we could spend more time discussing why it was Auckland that was here.
We don't need
I get the feeling there's not a great appetite for that.
Maybe on the Gab and Craig show. I think there might be a demand for that after today.
And we'll chuck in some amortization, maybe a bit of financial stability, financial fair play rules. No?
There's no budget for that.
Yeah.
I'm afraid.
So I think that brings the end of our Club World Cup chat right now. Just
for the year.
Schedule for the day. Wednesday, this is what we've got coming up. Dortmund Ulsan, Mamelodi Sundowns against Fluminense, Inter taking on River Plate, and Urawa taking on Monterrey.
Urawa Red Diamonds.
Urawa Red Diamonds, yes, of course. All matches, of course, streaming live on DAZN. And so, Johnny Cardozo said that Real Betis reps are in Madrid to meet with Atletico to try and finalise a deal. This story coming from our Mateo Moreto on our website. You'll be able to read more about it. So, still La Liga, just a different club that we'll be seeing Johnny Cardozo at should this all go ahead. And Football Americas will have you covered on this story on Thursday. Make sure to join the crew from 12 a.m. Eastern to keep you up to date with everything.
Why do they have to keep stealing people from our show?
We know you love a birthday, Craig, so we thought we would show some images of Messi on what is his birthday.
What age is he?
And he's got a Smurf cake.
It's 38. Sorry, I didn't see.
You were trying to catch me.
No, I didn't see it. I didn't see that there.
Yes, 38 years old. It's Luis Garcia's birthday as well today.
Yeah, where's he? Probably earning a coin somewhere.
Some far off.
Oh, he's in America, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
He's here. He'll do anything for $1.
World Cup, of course. As Craig said, he'll go to the opening of an envelope.
He will. How much for doing this Club World Cup? $5 a day. I'll do it.
Luis Garcia, happy birthday.
I hope he's watching this.
Hopefully he is. All right.
Not Lionel Messi.
No, Luis Garcia, of course. I hope Lionel Messi's watching it as well. That would be great. Hey. Anyway, welcome into the latest edition of Extra Time. We've got Frank LeBuff here, Craig's here.
You know, like we just finished the show, because people that are watching the show are now watching this, but if you're just watching YouTube, tomorrow, or whatever day it is, we were just talking about Lionel Messi's birthday at the end of the show, and we were talking about people watching the show, and you said maybe Lionel Messi's watching the show, which is quite a stretch, I know. But he'd never understand you, would he?
He would, what with my Middlesbrough accent?
Yeah, no chance.
Oh, because your Scottish accent's so perfect.
He's got more chance.
Yeah, that's even worse.
He's got more chance with me and Stevie than he's got with you.
He could put subtitles on.
What? Sorry, what, us? I'm putting them on with you in a minute. With your northeast Teesside accent, he's not got a chance.
No, he hasn't. I'll speak to him in Spanish instead, then he'll understand me.
Well, your Spanish is about as good as Dan's, isn't it?
It's way better than Dan's, thank you very much. Okay.
You can say goodbye, you can say hello, and you can order a glass of wine. That's about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Since today is Messi's birthday, which is each one of your favourite Messi moments over the illustrious career?
Can't remember. Seriously, he's been that. You must. You fountain of knowledge. There's been so many. How can you score 50 goals a year and remember?
I'll tell you what. There's, for me, more than the moments, and there's obviously been a ton. It's that thing that I don't know how many goals he scored, but it feels like at least 300 of them have been the same move, where he cuts in from the wing inside and finishes from the edge of the box. And the defenders, they all know what he's going to do because he's done it a bazillion times before, and they can't stop him. I mean, that to me is greatness. I mean, old timers will know about, Garrincha, the winger who always did the same move, but he was executed so perfectly you couldn't stop that. And for me, that's the defining Messi moment.
My favourite moment is not a goal, and this is not. Before people start, I'm not a Messi fan over a Ronaldo fan, right? I just don't want to get into that.
Nobody even said Ronaldo's name. You did.
Well, no, brought him up.
The two of them are synonymous with each other, as we know. Bearing in mind the pressure from his country he was under, I think my favourite moment was seeing his nothing against France, Frank, but seeing that Argentinian team that was not as talented as the French, that had a lot of workmanlike players, had Messi in his mid-30s or whatever he was, getting over the line and winning a World Cup, and finally that moment for him where he didn't have however many million people in his home country saying, but Maradona did it. And you'll never be Maradona. To see, and maybe people still think that.
Well, he will never be Maradona.
But to still
World Cup,
to have that moment when he probably thought it was gone, when he looked at his age, when he looked at the team, thought, lose to Saudi Arabia, match day one, bit of a problem here, and then to go all the way and do it. That for me bettered any magical moments he had with goals, I think.
Yeah. Frank, what about you?
And it's funny that Craig mentioned the World Cup, because before that, Messi was playing in Paris, and a year before, I met him with Navas and their wives at the club that I'm working out, and they were there with the kids, and they have some football pitches, and they were playing football. And I talked to Lionel throughout his wife, because his wife was speaking English. And we talked, and I said to him that I wished him the best for the World Cup, not knowing that he would play against France in the final. But I felt that that would be nice for him to get finally the World Cup, because I think with the talent that he has, he deserves to be a World Cup winner. And I was very pleased for him, even if it was against France. A part of me said, that's only fair. That was kind of dedicated to him. So when he won the World Cup, I said, well, that's a good thing for that guy.
Let's be honest, Frank. He didn't want to talk to you. He sent his wife over.
He pretended not to.
Oh, well, that's probably true, but he didn't have the choice.
He's gone, who's the baldy guy with the beard that keeps trying to talk to me? Get that?
No, we were introduced to each other, and of course I was very flattered to talk to him. I think he didn't know who I was, so yeah, for him I was another guy.
Was you holding the World Cup?
Yeah,
you know you're normally holding a World Cup.
No.
You weren't tempted?
Because No, the World Cup is only here. You see, he's only here.
How he keeps it. Hold on, here's one I made earlier. Let's go down.
Oh, I thought you did.
Yeah. No. I don't go away. That's the place the World Cup stays, you know. But no.
You don't travel
Somebody
with it.
introduced her. They say Frank Club. Yeah, and it's funny because the guy say, "Oh, Lionel, can I introduce you to Frank Club? He's the World Cup winner." And suddenly you have the guy, because we were waiting for the translation. He turned at my head to look who the guy is. I never heard about that guy. Whatever.
Hold on a minute. This is classic Frank, this, isn't it? We're having a conversation about Lionel Messi.
And his finest
And
moment.
he's somehow managed to make this about him.
And his World Cup.
No, because you're absolutely twisted. I just said that I was happy, you know. I was happy to see the guy winning the World Cup against France.
Yeah.
That you didn't hear. That you didn't want to hear. You want to hear?
No, but you know, we're talking about Lionel Messi, one of the greats, and you said, yeah, I was talking to Messi, and I was talking to his wife, and he was. You know what I mean?
No, but he's happy for him because Messi now won a World Cup, so has ascended to Frank's level.
Yes.
1-1.
Even if he doesn't know who Frank is.
You see?
Okay, guys. Among these three, who will have the higher chance of top 6 next term? Manchester United or Spurs or Nottingham Forest?
Definitely not Nottingham Forest. I think that was I think they may be solid next year. I don't think they will ascend to the heights that they were. I mean, you're asking Chris Wood to have another season like he had. I think it's unlikely. I think history would probably tell you that. They're clinging on to Anthony Elanga at the moment with bids from Newcastle. They're possibly hanging on to Gibbs White. So there's a lot of things are happening. They've got a very, how can I put it, highly strong ownership and owner. I think, to me, if I'm being honest, I kind of think Tottenham, with the change in manager, might be the better chance than Man United. Although I did hear when I was away, when Don was over, that he somehow catapulted Man United into the top 4 with a few signings here and there.
Yes, he's done that. All right.
What about the rest of them?
Well, we can go around the rest of them. We've got quite a few questions. Has anyone?
Why have we got quite a few questions?
Because we put out the questions and people want to know. You guys are interested in talking about who has the higher chance?
So I think United and Spurs are both going to make the top 6 next year. I think I really like Thomas Frank, and he's going to have an instant impact, I think, simply by not being Ange, given the situation that was created at the club. But I would have to say, I mean, United need to finish top 6, otherwise Ruben Amorim's gone, right?
Yep.
So you think they're going to finish top 6?
I think they'll both finish top 6. I would expect United to finish higher. And if they don't, there's no alternative for me but changing the manager at that point.
Gab, with so much secrecy around the Man City case, has the Premier League protected itself by keeping things behind closed doors, or has it only made them look worse?
I think it definitely makes the Premier League look worse, and it makes the whole process of transparency look worse. However, in the Premier League's defense, these are the rules. They're following their own rules, and those rules were written in the early 90s when the Premier League was first created. And back then, you had 20 owners who were all rich people, but you didn't necessarily have states, you didn't necessarily have billionaires and oligarchs and Mr. Marinakis and all this stuff. You generally had 20 pretty, I don't know if they were all British, but pretty close to it, pretty like-minded people. And so they said, let's keep everything, let's have the rules be actually quite secretive in our procedures, nothing really public, and we'll all sit in a room and we'll all figure it out ourselves and we'll present a united front. And that worked for a long time under the previous Premier League chief executive, Richard Scudamore. The thing is, the owners have changed. Now you have owners who they're all just very different one from the other. And now you've got this very litigious, very poisonous process between City against the Premier League. And I think we would all benefit from a lot more transparency. But unfortunately, the way the rules are written, they can't do that. That should be something that they do once this is over. rewrite the rules. People deserve transparency.
And I think people want to know, without, a quick summation of this, what's the time frame here?
Well, listen, Richard Masters testified before Parliament, and he specifically asked them, right, this Premier League chief executive, and they asked him, like, what is the time frame here? Exactly what you're asking. And he said, I don't know, but if I knew, I couldn't tell you. He's the chief executive of the organization, right?
Yeah.
There's 20. When we say about Premier League, it's 20 dudes. They're all men who run these football clubs, right? And they're hamstrung by their own rules that they were in 20 years ago. They would love to know. The reality is nobody knows. These 3 men have gone away. Manchester City doesn't know. Heck, we know Pep Guardiola has no idea. Remember when he said, was it back in February? He's like, oh yeah, I think in the next month. He's got no idea. The lawyers for the 2 teams don't have any idea. They will probably find out 24 hours before the official decision comes out, and then either the Premier League will leak it, or City will leak it, or they'll both leak it. But they don't know. They're all just sitting there and they're waiting.
Okay. Frank, is there still a lot of animosity toward Messi from the PSG club and fans?
I don't think so. Really. I didn't like what he said when he said he didn't have a good time in Paris. That's the only guy who doesn't like Paris. I mean, it's a beautiful city, and so that's how I don't even understand the guy when he said that. But no, I don't think so. I think overall, now they have the time to digest what he said. People were happy to have Messi. It wasn't the Messi that they were expecting. I think if Messi would have been as good as he was in Barcelona, he would have stayed in Barcelona. Therefore, it's why maybe he came to Chelsea to rebound or to finish his career. But it wasn't the Messi that before, but he was still a very good Messi. And I think people were proud of having him in the club.
The next one's great. There is apparently a mythical version of Craig called Golf Course Craig, which is extremely positive, fun to be around, and the life of the party. In what context do the rest of the guys turn into their version of Golf Course Craig? So before we ask the guys this, do you understand why the other guys tell us about Golf Course Craig?
Yeah.
Who is Golf Course Craig?
A very patient, understanding. Patient, understanding, play with anybody. Pretty much. Enjoy it. I have a great enjoyment of it.
Discusses MLS while he's on the course.
Don't talk football, although some of my older American friends who are trying to understand it ask me the most ridiculous questions, which they get shot down. But no, that's the difference. What people got to understand is, this is obvious. I can't be Golf Course Craig in this studio. This is my job, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We have a job to do here. We're not here to be friends all the time. It's nice when you can, and it's nice when everybody can agree. Him and I have been falling out for 20 years now. From 5 Live to you name it. We were Chelsea TV, we've had it all. Argument.
Who is the real Craig though? ESPN FC Craig or Golf Course Craig?
No. Well, in a work capacity, I am who I am. That's not going to change. I mean, I've always been this way in radio and TV. I can't stand fudging. I cannot stand, and everybody does it different. Some people think they can do TV. They all come into it, and most of them have not got an idea. The one thing that it really annoys me is when people want to take the money for the job but don't want to do the job. Now, some are better than others at it, but it doesn't mean you can sit in the studio and not have prepped or not have an opinion. Or not want to say something because you're upsetting a friend or you're upsetting him. That's not your job. That annoys me. Because if you want to take the money, you have to be prepared to put yourself out there. But when you're away from it, it's different, isn't it? We don't have that pressure. It's not. It's a difficult one to explain to people.
Okay.
We're not here. I'm not sitting here. We're not here to agree with everything everyone is saying. We're here to analyse the games, analyse the seasons coming up, analyse the league, and debate a difference of opinion, which a lot of us have, which is normal. And I think that's what makes life interesting. If we all had the same opinion and we all had the same personality, the whole the whole damn world would be boring.
Wait, so golf course Craig doesn't debate anything, doesn't disagree with anybody. He just doesn't really care about how.
No, I will. I will.
But he's pleasant doing it.
Yeah. I'm very, very pleasant.
And respectful of other people's opinions. And
there are many opinions in golf. I will not shout at somebody.
I know Craig. I played with him, and we had some dinners together. He's a straightforward person.
Why are we talking about me, by the way? Talking about me. I don't want to talk about
the question is literally called golf course Craig.
No, but shut up. I was about saying good things about you, you know.
I don't like good things being said
when
about
he works.
me.
Yeah, but you know, put your fingers in your ears if you don't want to hear me. But when he works, and I know my friend Christophe Dugarry in France, a kind of same person. They are legit to talk about football, and when they're not happy about something, they say it, and they're not going from another way, you know, to make sure that he will pleases everybody. No, they have to say the stuff. They say the stuff, and like he says, I don't give the stuff, and that's who he is. And he does it very well, I think. It's why he's entertaining, and he doesn't really say what people want to hear. And it's why we have a debate, and it's very interesting. But when we go outside of the studio, that guy is a gentleman. I know him. Yeah, I know how good he can be, but still with opinions. And I really appreciate Craig. I always did, and I will always do.
Okay, so Frank, what's your version? Who's your alter ego?
Again, the end, what did you say?
What's the alter ego that you have? Is it when you act? Is that when you're a completely different person? Is that why you like to act, to be somebody different?
No, I don't know. I don't really know. I mean, I pretend on TV to be the person that people like to see. The frank, French, not humble, with a big ego, because that's how you see the French with the cliche, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not that type of person. Never been that type of person. I always consider the others. I always take care of the others. I pay attention to the others. That's not who I am. But I'm on TV. Again, I'm entertaining people, and I say I say truth. But when I show the World Cup, I don't never do that. It's just because I know that people are gonna comment it, that people are gonna tease me, and that's how the show is.
Okay.
If I'm on I don't want to prolong this pain any longer. if I'm on a golf course and somebody's taking a little bit of time playing their shot or something, and I'm like, yeah, don't worry, take your time. I am.
No,
do you mean it when you say that?
Yeah. I've said, don't worry, take your time. Don't rush. It's fine. Don't blah blah blah. But if I'm in the studio here and somebody's flapping around, whoever it is over there, I'd be like, get on with it. Because we haven't got time. This is a short show. It's not 4.5 hours like around the golf. It's pretty short, particularly when you're doing a live show.
It is.
30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it is. Don't have time for waffle. It's at an hour and 20 we've been today. I thought we'd have been out of here at 6:50.
That's why I'm not putting the questions around to everybody.
Well, I tell you what, if you want to get out quick, they're moaning at us in the gallery, right? They're behind us, they're all moaning. The APs are moaning, the director's moaning, the producer's moaning. Who's put all the questions out? If you'd have put 2 questions out,
and I want to go to bed, and I want to sleep
today.
The big boss, he's probably in his car driving down the I-84 as we speak. He's gone.
Gab, do you have an alter ego?
No, just very quickly. In real life, with certain specific exceptions, mostly to do with food or injustice, I'm much more tolerant of other people's opinions, no matter how badly thought out or insulting they are. Become more tolerant, more zen that way.
More zen. Okay, who will win the World Cup next year?
More questions.
Who's going to win the World Cup? That's a one-word answer for all of you. Who's going to win the World Cup next year?
Spain.
Argentina.
Frank?
Spain.
Okay. Frank, start, bench or drop these 3 French left backs. Lizarazu, Abidal and Evra.
Oh my God. So I tell you, I start Lizarazu, 100%. I start Lizarazu. He for me was a fantastic defender. I played with him. He was a warrior. After, I think I would put Patrice Evra. And then, sorry for Eric, even if I really love him. But Patrice Evra was more type of player that would have loved to play like Lizarazu, first defenders, then a little bit more attacking. But I think defensively, Lizarazu and Evra were better than Abidal. Goodbye. Goodbye, everybody.
Not golf course, Craig.
When are you going to invite Craig on the Gavin
What do we
Jones
put
show?
that up for?
Just so you can talk some more and for even longer on a podcast.
I get wound up by Jules. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, should we get him on?
I'm busy enough. And I don't mean busy.
Trivia question for Craig.
I don't
Who
do
is
Football
it?
Americas. And I'm a one-man show. There he is, look. There he is, look. There he is, as ginger as they come, look. Actually, that must have been the first minute of the first game. Because he isn't that red, is he? And I tell you what, look how skinny he was.
Yeah.
What's
Oh,
happened?
that was a French referee, Mr. Quignou. Mr. Quignou.
Joel
Friend of
Quignou,
mine.
right?
Joel. Yeah, Joel Quignou.
He's got to be 3 times
That
that
was
size
against
now,
who?
isn't
Uruguay, Italy. What was the team you played against?
he?
That
Germany.
was Italy, Uruguay.
Germany. West
No,
Germany.
not that game. No,
I
no,
don't know.
No.
He was a child
Not
in
that game.
1986.
Not that game.
I wasn't looking at. I wasn't looking at the players. I was fixated on the ginger Scotsman.
Who looked like a tomato. All right. That's all we've got time for on the latest edition of ESPN FC.
Oh, praise the Lord!
It's already tomorrow.
Holy smokes!
Good night.
Good morning.